I am perhaps unusually receptive to revisionist and radical histories, but it always places me in bad company. Most recently, the mythicist view of Christian origins has been gaining traction, no longer a subject of outright academic ridicule. This proposes that Jesus is not, as Protestant historiography has always tended to believe, an historical figure who is subject to extensive myth-making, but is rather a mythical figure who is subject to extensive historicising. It is an acutely sensitive matter in Christianity of any stripe because of the doctrine of the Incarnation. There is, however, now a parade of mythicists who make the equation, Jesus was a myth, therefore I'm an atheist. I don't see how that follows. Atheism is a metaphysical position. Can you reject historical religion and still have theist metaphysics? Of course you can. Can you question historical narratives without being an avowed materialist? Of course you can. I am uncomfortable when I find myself in the company of God-haters, smug humanists and loudmouth conspiracy theorists. In part, it's an American problem. Many of these mythicists are engaged in a cultural battle against the Christian right. Well, good for them. But to be clear, that's not my agenda. I'm not interested in American culture wars. I don't pursue studies in order to somehow strike a blow against Trumpism. I don't wake up having nightmares about The Handmaid's Tale. I do appreciate the fraught contest of ideas that is dysfunctional America, and even more the extent to which it is a biblical culture from the beginning, and has been shaped by biblical literalism. The appallingly litigious nature of American society is a direct result of its cultural dependence upon the book and the written word. It's a nation of lawyers, and even in secular biblical studies, many scholars prosecute their case as if they are lawyers. Indeed, we find people on anti-Christian crusades, understandable in a noxious political culture, but there is still no reason why it should end in atheism, cynicism and nihilism. Atheism, to be clear, is not illegitimate in itself. It is, finally, a religious doctrine. It's an entirely legitimate position in Hinduism, for example. But that's not the rancid, small-minded, bitter, smart-assed atheism of Voltaire. I'm all in favour of rich, healthy forms of atheism and scepticism. But that's not what we have today. I once gave some talks to the Rationalist Society. Nice people, but with an unhealthy preoccupation with the thing they hated. I was hoping to discuss the mystique of the book, the spell cast by the written word. They just wanted to hear that the Bible is bunk. And at every turn there is the false dichotomy, facts and lies. A myth is a fabrication, and therefore nefarious. But surely there are other forms of truth. The novels of Dostoevsky are fictions. There was really no such man as Raskolnikov, although it was perhaps based on a character from a newspaper. And yet, who wants to say that the novels of Dostoevsky are not true? In any case, I'm not a Christian hater, and my view of myths and mythology isn't stuck in the 19th century as if Sir James Fraser had the last word on the matter, or as if Jung and Levi-Strauss and Robin and Eliade and a host of other formidable minds had not deepened our understanding of the mythic life of man and made the whole matter far more mysterious. English atheism is among the most tawdry. Typically, the English atheist just thinks that religion is a con, and he's not falling for it. It's the atheism of Ricky Gervais. It's the morality of the small shopkeeper. His validation in life is that he wasn't shortchanged. He has a deep-seated fear of being cheated. Let me say here that while I'm happy to expose the historical foundations of early Christianity, and I'm happy to say that the Gospels were not written by the evangelists, and I'm happy to place the text late, I'm happy to see most of it as myth rather than solid history, I can still regard the doctrine of the Trinity in its implications as metaphysically beautiful. It's a beautiful thing, a great achievement, the doctrine of the Trinity. It is intellectually beautiful, metaphysically elegant. If it is the culmination of the messy historical processes that gave birth to Christianity and wasn't delivered by angels, then so be it. And it is only in a culture of biblical literalism that Christianity haters can score cheap points by demonstrating that it has no textual foundations. Finally, this is a distinctly Protestant type of erosion. Once Luther reached the point of Scripture alone, sola scriptura, he was confronted by the problem of the canonicity of the letter of James, which he dubbed the Epistle of Straw. Subsequently, it was in this tradition that Lutheran scholars questioned the authenticity of the letter, since they reasoned such a letter could not possibly be apostolic. At length, they applied tools borrowed from classical philology to the task, and concluded that the letter of James is indeed late pseudepigrapha. But the cat was then out of the bag. The same critical tools could also be applied to other documents in the New Testament, and they too were exposed as pseudonymous. Eventually, all the Gospels failed the test, and so too most of the letters, in fact, almost the entire collection. So now we understand the Catholic preference for tradition. The Catholics knew, in a way the Protestants didn't, that the historical foundations of the faith were shaky, if not gelatinous. Reflecting upon what we see of the early processes, it is perhaps the case that Scripture was, as it were, forced upon nascent Christianity. It was Marcion, mid-2nd century, who introduced the idea that the Christians needed a scripture of their own, a scripture to supersede the Septuagint of the Jews. This is in the terrible aftermath of the Bar Kokhba War. The canon of Gospels and letters, the New Testament, seems to be the outcome of internal struggles initiated by Marcion's challenge, a challenge backed by his very substantial donation of money. All parties in nascent Christianity agree on one thing. There had been some manner of divine intervention in the form of prophetic fulfillment. That is how they understood the events that had transpired. The Jewish scriptures had reached their telos. Marcion felt this warranted a new scripture. The Church grappled with this, but at length provided one, counter Marcion. And it was necessarily historical because the divine intervention had been an intervention into history. The historicity of Christ insists on this and takes this particular form. It is, as it were, a meditation upon the higher significance of what were epoch-making historical events. We can understand the context. Nor am I scandalised by the idea that the imperium, the authorities of the day, the Roman state, was an active player in the religious life of the empire. We import modern secular sensitivities to such ancient realities. Mithraism, the cult of Serapis, the cult of the imperium, the control of literature, the imposition of official histories, wholesale myth-making, noble lies. Why should we be surprised to find such things in the formative processes of Christianity, which in only a comparatively short time became the official cult of the empire? Christianity is another syncretic cultus, the Roman appropriation of Oriental religious culture, a Judaism for Gentiles. Its development could not have been a matter of indifference to the Roman state. which is to say, it is unsurprising. There is no need to import the modern separation of church and state as the moral norm and to frame it with contemporary American outrage as if the Romans were MAGA Republicans putting Bibles into schools. The combative and indecent nature of contemporary discourse, which imports modern sensitivities into the ancient scenarios, is often disturbing. I'm especially concerned for sincere Christians whose personal certainties are rocked by the academic assault on cherished narratives. To be frank, many people need a simple faith. Atheism is not for the faint-hearted. It dooms many people to nihilism. There was a TV series, I'm not sure which one. One of the characters was watching a Christian revival meeting in a frontier town on the Old West. He called them simple fools. But the other character, much wiser, said, if it wasn't for religion, these people would be dangerous. It's not just a matter of social control. It's a matter of existential meaning, of metaphysical ground. Men cannot live without meaning. They cannot thrive in metaphysical quicksand. Surely this is one of the lessons of the 20th century. It's where the so-called Enlightenment fails. For my part, I'm a Platonist and I see these matters through a Platonic lens, not the shallow Marxist lens that can only see religion as the opiate of the masses. It is rather more than that. All the same, Christians, everybody, have to come to terms with the fact that our civilization is now realistically post-Christian, and the Gordian knot of Christian history unravels. I'm acutely aware that this is a negative undertaking. This is an age for deconstruction. A new age of construction will come, no doubt. But presently we are dealing with the untangling of the Christian order, a process that began with the Reformation, if not earlier. Christendom, let us recall, was replaced by Europe long ago, and Europe became the theatre for the most devastating wars in history, something that is ongoing, not to mention crimes of truly historical proportions. Christian civilization has been unravelling for a long time. Radical biblical criticism joins in the fun. But sooner or later there is the question, what now? Where to now? If the Christian age is over, what then? A rationalist utopia? I think it behoves biblical scholars who are engaged in deconstruction to have this and related questions somewhere in their mind. As we clear away the debris, what do we want to grow in the space that opens up before us?